Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Game Plan Hangout show on Saturday, which is a little weird. Um, my name is Leo Howell. I'm joined by Matt Harmon, and we're doing this a little later this week because of something that happened on Thursday. I think like everybody got a day off of work because the Lions were playing football or something. But how was your day off of work because the Lions were playing football, Matt?
Actually, we get the day off work because the Cowboys were playing. You know, they are America's team after all.
Oh yeah, yeah. God set that holiday because it's God's team too. Because that's why there's a hole in the roof, is so that God can watch them play.
Indeed. And now we are down an interesting path. No, but in all seriousness, yeah, it was good. It was nice. I ate a shitload of food and watched a bunch of football, and it was great. Actually, all the games were pretty interesting, which is something, I mean, the first two were the score was pretty out of hand, but at the same time, they were all interesting. They were compelling, which isn't always the case on Thanksgiving. So it was good.
The games at least had meaning, yeah.
Right,
Like,
yeah, they were all
even though
division.
they kind of got out of hand a little bit. I missed half of the Dallas game visually. I had to listen to it while I was traveling. And I actually fell asleep at halftime of the late game because it was just such a ugh.
Yeah,
There was just nothing going on in that game, and I see that I didn't miss anything by missing the second half. So
yeah, I was driving. Actually, I was driving back back to Fairfax in the first half of that third game, and I was like, I don't really care. This is going to be one of those games you don't get to see the first half.
yeah, like I got to see the Robert Turbin touchdown, which was great for fantasy purposes, and
Oh, yeah.
that pretty much set the tone for what that game was going to be. So
And I don't know what you played like DFS wise on Thursday, but what an annoying experience that was.
I it's one of those where it seems like there's so few players that you can almost like cover all your bases, eventually. But
Yeah.
that wasn't the case
No.
at all. I did cash in the big DK tournament with my quadruple Lions stack lineup. Stafford, Calvin, Ebron, Joik Bell. Obviously, Ebron didn't do a ton for me, but getting any points out of a minimum salary guy on a short slate can.
And really, the only tight end of consequence on the Thanksgiving games was Martellus Bennett. So
Yeah, like if you didn't have Bennett, you didn't get anything because Witten scored less than Ebron and costed more. So, um, but yeah, so sorry, my voice started echoing back at me because I had the window open for the show in
oh my.
Chrome. Um, okay, since I totally know how to use Google, we'll go ahead here. We're gonna preview Week 13. We're gonna preview Week 13, and we're gonna set a DraftKings lineup as we do. We came pretty close to cashing this last time, but I want to say we had like one landmine in our FanDuel lineup last week that set us back. It was kind of a frustrating. Like these past couple weeks in DFS have been just kind of generally weird. But this past weekend was no exception. But we did actually. I feel like it's one of those lineups where if we had entered it into a 50-50, we would have cashed. But since we were going for a GPP, we fell short. Let me pull it up real quick and see what we did. Oh yeah, and part of the reason is because since we set this lineup early, we had Trent Richardson in there, and if he wound up scoring, so whatever. But if we had known, we probably would have changed it up a little bit when we learned he was not starting. I wouldn't have kept him in there. I don't know about you.
No.
But we did have Josh McCown, who was a little bit of a disappointment, but particularly, Mike Evans was definitely a disappointment considering his price. But we did nail Steve Smith. We picked the right Smith to score a touchdown. We had Des Bryant. We had C.J. Anderson. And those guys got us up pretty close to the cash spot. Actually, it was 78-64 was the cash line, like the spot in the tournament that was where you paid out, and we were only 400 spots behind that. So we're making progress.
We are.
We'll get cash eventually.
And hey, we're doing this on a Saturday, so as opposed to a Wednesday, so theoretically we should have an advantage.
Yeah,
We,
well,
we
we
won't
already
have Jarek
know.
McKinnon in our lineup.
Yeah, so we're not going to put Jerick McKinnon in there, and we're also authority. I'm going to set the standard now. We're not going to put any Minnesota Vikings running backs in our lineup.
Oh, let's play Joe Banyard for
Yeah, I was going to say let's play Joe Banyard because first of all, because we know how great that offense is at getting touches to the guys who deserve it.
Amen.
So yeah, it's going to be Matt Asiata gets a lot of touches and no yards, and you have to hope he scores week. So um,
I'm putting
yeah.
Banyard in my millionaire maker lineup. No,
I feel
seriously.
like I have him in some tourney lineup just because I ran out of money and was like, whatever. I'll
No,
probably wind up. I'll
like
wind up changing it.
I'm dead serious. I'm doing it just because the pricing that like there's some of the prices this week are really it's tough and there's so few games. It's tough to get like
Yes.
a bunch of good players in.
Yeah. It is a very difficult week all around particularly on DraftKings. I feel FanDuel's a little
Yeah.
easier, which is weird because DraftKings kind of it's always on one opposite or the other. It's always on it's polar.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever situation. So let's go ahead and start looking at the week ahead. And we're just going to go game by game. And we're going to start with, man, this game could be really ugly. Washington heading to Indianapolis to play the Colts. And Washington rolling with Colt McCoy under center against Vontae Davis and the Colts defense. I'm just going to go ahead and say that pretty much the only players for Washington I would even begin to consider would be Jordan Reed and Niles Paul, and the health concerns there make it a little shaky. Like if you're in a season-long league and you've got those guys, like go ahead and roll them out. I think either one is fine. Paul is obviously a big boost if Reed winds up not playing, but it sounds like Reed is going to play, which I feel like they're both going to get targets because they're kind of the third and fourth receivers for that team. There's nobody beyond Garcon and Jackson that are really viable targets in the passing game. So they both do get looks. Obviously it fluctuates when Reed's in there, but there's nobody else on Washington that I'm looking at, especially not McCoy. I feel like he's too imprecise to go up against this defense with guys like Davis, with Davis and their safeties that are more than capable of taking advantage of his mistakes. And then on the other side, I'll let you talk about it, but definitely a week that you can fire up your players from the Colts because they've got a really good matchup.
Yeah, Colts. You're paying up. Hilton's a good pay up candidate of all the guys. None of them really have a group like more expensive wide receivers in daily. None of them really have an overwhelmingly great matchup except Hilton. So if you're going to pay up, he's probably one to go for. The running
Dwayne Allen is out.
So you can go with Fleener.
Fleener is viable, but
you're still playing Kobe Fleener.
He's a non-Gronk tight end, so you're getting what you pay for, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. If you take 2 points, you got what you deserve.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, and that's the thing about Indianapolis' offense right now. Other than Hilton and Luck, while this is a great matchup, there's no one you can really feel confident about playing. I want to see. It'd be nice if we could trust like that Boom Herron was gonna get a bunch of touches and all that, but there's still Trent Richardson there, and he's still taking up space unnecessarily. Indianapolis' offense is a little. Listen, there's not like I'm going to play all my Colts because who are you going to play other than Hilton and Luck? You like you said, Fleener.
It's pretty much those three.
Is Wayne playing? He's out, right?
No, I think Wayne's fine.
I thought I saw something that he was injured this week, but either way, what are you going to expect? 4 catches for 50 yards? I don't know.
It looks like he's fine. Reggie Wayne actually said this week on criticisms of him that, quote, that's toilet material. So.
Oh, how?
So if you're into Narrative Street, then
how polite of him.
He's ready to go show everybody how toilet material their hot takes on him are. So if you're into Narrative Street, there you go. He does not look the same. So I'm not if you have him in season long, he's a PPR option because he still does get 10 targets a game, but not really a guy to pay for in DFS even at a decent price. Also, Hakeem Nicks is kind of no longer a thing. Moncrief is starting to take snaps from him and targets from him. So at this point, neither one's really, approachable. And in a game where, game script is probably going to dictate that the Colts are going to kind of take the foot off the gas in the second half, more than likely. I'm not sure that I'm going to chase Moncrief in a tougher matchup where they're going to throw it a little more and maybe take some more shots down the field. Moncrief has definitely got to take a look at. But like you said, Fleener, Hilton, and of course Luck are all good plays here. And in season long, I'll play Heron if I've got him, if I picked him up, because it's a fine enough matchup. And even Richardson, if you've got Richardson and you don't have any better options. But there's no bye weeks, and in season long you got to play the Thursday games, so you probably were able to start all your guys. So that shouldn't be a big concern. The only thing would be is if you have to replace a McKinnon or something, that Heron or Richardson would be a decent guy to do that with. I also think that I'd play the Colts defense in this one, in DFS and in season long. McCoy is kind of a time bomb waiting to go off. He's not accurate at all, which is crazy because people are going to look at his completion percentage this year and think that he's accurate, but he's really not. And
No.
He is, always living on the edge. And I think that this is the game where he could totally just fall apart. He could also just post a good game, but I think this could be a week where he could totally fall apart too.
Yeah, that's bound to happen at any point. So this could definitely be that week, like you said.
And then it would be bringing Cousins in mid-game, and that it could get really bad for Washington. So
I've got one coworker up here who has the audacity to tell me that he said, "Dude, Colt McCoy is nice," and I'm like, wrong.
He might be a nice person.
Yeah, no, but you know what I mean.
Yes, no, I know what you mean.
But it was, and I just said, I was like, dude, you were telling me a few months ago that Kirk Cousins was nice, so I don't want to hear anything from you. You're just like many Washington fans. He's at that point where it's just anybody, but the backup to Robert Griffin is nice.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's about it for that game. Colts have a 30-point total, so I feel like we're a little low on that offense in general, but it's just tough to figure out who's going to actually be the one to score. So
I mean, I just think it's going to be the guys. It's going to be who you're expecting it as opposed to.
Yeah.
Like you said,
I feel like this is a game where you'll see a Jack Doyle touchdown.
Totally. I mean, Moncrief had his best game. That was a good point by you because some people might want to chase that in a good matchup. But he had his best game in a really competitive shootout format with the Steelers. And,
without Wayne in the lineup.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
I wouldn't bother chasing that this week either.
No, I don't know what their schedule is ahead. I know that they play Jacksonville again or something. They've got or Tennessee again. They've got a really weak schedule because of their division. But if they play any competitive games, you'll want to target that with Moncrief, especially if we see his volume go up this week. Mm-hmm. Titans at Texans, the battle of the Oilers. Oilers revenge game, I guess.
Ryan Fitzpatrick revenge game.
Ryan Fitzpatrick revenge game. I didn't even think about that. I mean, I'm already using him because I love Ryan Fitzpatrick, but
you're so gross.
Yeah, the Ryan Fitzpatrick revenge game. This game is on my little cheat sheet that I make up with my matchups and the players I'm targeting. I've got multiple guys listed on the Texans players I'm targeting list. I've got none on the Tennessee one. There's not a Tennessee player you could pay me to put on my roster this week. In season long, if you're, again, these are if you're desperate at a position, but you probably shouldn't be because there's no bye weeks, I would play Justin Hunter if you've got him in some sort of boomer bust, wide receiver 3 sort of play. I don't want to touch the running game. I don't like Mettenberger in this game. And Kendall Wright is not a viable option with Mettenberger at quarterback. Delaney Walker obviously is the tight end 1 because anyone with a pulse is a tight end 1 at this point in the NFL. But then on the Houston side, I do like Fitzpatrick in DFS as a punt play. But I think that the real player to target in this game is Arian Foster. Tennessee is just so bad at defending the zone run. They've got defensive linemen who can get penetration and get up the field and do some things against power run. but their second and third level defenders just have no clue how to defend the zone run, and there's always cutback lanes, and there's nobody better at that than Arian Foster. And so that's something I previewed for Roto Grinders this week. Like, they just have no idea how to defend like zone runs and counters and misdirections of any kind, because they just all flow to the play side, and then a guy like Arian Foster just does his jump cut and runs the other way, and it's a 40-yard touchdown. So Arian Foster looks like he's going to play. If he plays, he's the top running back option to me this week. I think there's nobody better than him. If he doesn't play for some reason, like if there's a flare-up with his injury, I don't think that Alfred Blue is as good of a play, but I still think he's a decent one. I just think his price has gotten too high in DFS to justify him as a top play. I think he's a tournament guy in that case. But I think that the way they use him and his lack of kind of misdirection and top-end speed make him not quite the same sort of play. But they'll give him 30 carries if he's the only back. So, you can still go with that and hope that, they get a couple goal line opportunities for him.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Schematic advantage that Houston has by you, and I pretty much agree. The Texans struggle a little bit at defending wide receivers, but it's like a certain type of wide receivers. Like, that your AJ Green type will blow up against the Texans like he did last week. Tennessee doesn't have that guy, at all. So
yeah, and Justin Hunter is theoretically that guy, but he's never done it yet. But you can give him a shot, but you're not.
And don't get fooled into the fact that Justin Hunter had a long touchdown last week. Like, it was actually tipped off the defender and kind of fell right to him, and he ran it in for a score. So this is not like the beginning of the Justin Hunter breakout. So he's a good way to say it. He's theoretically that guy, but he's not that guy.
Yeah.
And then on Houston, we kind of already know what their passing offense looks like with Fitzpatrick. Hopkins is going to be that big play red zone type of guy, and his Fitzpatrick's little pop gun arm is going to get Andre Johnson a bunch of receptions that go pretty much nowhere. So.
Yep. Johnson is your PPR play. Hopkins is your standard play.
DFS tournament guy.
Yeah. Hopkins is the tournament play.
I think he's a good tournament play this week too, actually.
Do they usually play sides? Because one of them's going to have McCourty, and
I think Johnson ends up probably with McCourty more, because I'm pretty sure. I check this right now, but I'm pretty sure Johnson plays more on that right side at this point, and Hopkins plays more on the left, which would leave Hopkins with that Wilson character. I don't know that for sure. Yeah, gross. He's pretty terrible. So that would be. I think that's going to end up being, it's more of a Hopkins game than a Johnson game. And in general, when you're targeting ceiling, that is Hopkins over Johnson for sure.
All right. Well, while you take a look at that, I'll just point out a couple more things in this game. I think that the Texans' defense is also a great play here. Mettenberger is a statue in the pocket, and the Texans have good pass rush, and he's also prone to make mistakes. And the game script for this one may just take the ball out of the Titans' hands for most of it. The Texans may control, 60% of the time of possession or more, as they just kind of run the clock out against Tennessee. So they may not have opportunities to get yards or points if you're in a league where that counts, in your favor with the defense, and then also the opportunity for turnovers and sacks and things like that is very high. So I think that those all pretty much everything on the Texans. There's the few guys on offense and then their defense, and then pretty much nothing on Tennessee, with the exception of a lottery ticket with Hunter if you're looking to be bold at your wide receiver spot.
Yeah, it looks like the two Texans receivers switch sides a lot too, so they should.
Okay. So it's the same then. It's just what we always expect from them. It's PPR, Johnson, safer play. Not as much upside, and then Hopkins is a bigger play guy and a red zone guy. Let's move to Browns versus Bills. This has got one of the lower overall totals of the week. Bills will be hosting this game, so it'll be cold, but I don't think there's been weather this week like there was before. Josh Gordon's back and saw a ridiculous portion of his team's offense last week.
Targeted on 46.9% of the routes he ran per reception that came up this morning.
And was like 40% of the team's targets too. overall. So even though he didn't literally play every snap, he was close enough. And when he was out there, he was pretty much getting the ball nearly every time. Um, and the Bills are a decent passing defense, but they are above average in terms of points allowed to wide receivers. So if you've got Josh Gordon, you've got to start him. DFS, his price is different on different sites. It's still low enough on DraftKings to where he's kind of a value play. I want to say it's either Victive or Fantasy Up, one of the two sites I'm playing on now, other than the two big ones, where he's 1,000 more than any other receiver. Like that's not the play.
Yeah, no,
that's not the play. Even though his volume is ridiculous, that's not the play. But on DraftKings, with the PPR, with him still being a little cheaper, I like him there. FanDuel, I think he's a little more expensive, and without full PPR, he's more of a tournament play slash just kind of a, in that mix with all those other wide receivers at that range.
Actually, I think you might have that the other way around. Gordon is the 5th expensive receiver on DraftKings. I actually think he might be the better value on FanDuel. But
I want to say that it's just price. I don't know if it's like relative to. I don't know. I found it easy to fit him into lineups, but I may be just totally weird about how I'm setting lineups. So
he's 83 on DraftKings.
Yeah, see, like that seems like that's what, like 200 more than Hilton. Like I feel like they're interchangeable. Like I think that's maybe what I'm thinking is that like.
Sure. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Interchange those guys, whereas on FanDuel, like he's maybe I am getting it backwards. I don't know. He's a good enough price on the two main sites though. I don't think it's a bad price on either one. So
yeah, that sounds about right.
Particularly with, like I said, with the full point PPR, he's going to catch 10 passes. Like it's almost guaranteed. Yeah. But even with him back, still like Crowell. And on the Buffalo side, I definitely think that I'm going to be looking at Robert Woods this week. I know it seems like it's chasing last week's points, but there's a very good chance that he's going up against Buster Skrine a lot on Sunday. And that's a great matchup for a guy that obviously has the trust of his quarterback and, quite frankly, is looking like the team's top option here lately. So what are your thoughts on Robert Woods and on any other players in this game, including Crowell and the Cleveland running game?
Well, interesting note on Crowell. I was listening to On the Couch this morning, and Rich Rebar was on, and he was bringing up the point that while Buffalo's like season-long stats against the run look really well, they've actually been trending down in recent weeks. So that's something to take a note of, in that if you're looking through your DFS lineups and you're thinking, oh, Crowell, Buffalo, I'm not going to play, I think actually it's a good idea to try to, because he's still pretty. I think he's still relative price-wise is still okay. So I think he's still someone that you should look to get in. And as far as Robert Woods and Sammy Watkins, I mean, that's a pretty good point by you. I don't know about the whole team's top option thing. I think that might be a little bit of your Sammy Watkins hate coming out, maybe. I don't know. No, but
I mean, I've been rostering Sammy Watkins. Like it's not like I completely disregard him, but
right.
Well, let me pull up the target numbers real quick while you keep talking.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I think that's actually a good point, though, matchup-wise with the cornerback. Buster Skrine, we know he gets picked on a lot. So Robert Woods is coming off a good game. I know there's a little bit of – isn't there a little bit of health questions with him right now, too? Or do I just not have any grip on the injury report?
I feel like he was on the injury report, but not –
I think he's still going to play. Yeah.
Not one that's all that worrisome.
Okay.
Let's go dating back to week 8. Woods has been targeted 27 times, Watkins 25. So, and Chris Hogan 19. And Chris Hogan's price has gone way too high on DraftKings, but if you're on a site or in season long and you can get Chris Hogan in PPR, like I'm cool with that. Because he is definitely seeing some good snaps, and he'll also be playing against Justin Gilbert or Buster Skrine for most of the day. You got to feel like Hayden and Watkins are going to be clashing heads quite a bit, both due to the sides they play and if they shadow him. Either way, Evan Silva in his matchups column pretty much pointed out that it's probably going to be a Watkins versus Hayden sort of day. So, and you don't want that. I don't think you want that. This is my Sammy Watkins hate coming through. That's one of my big concerns with him is, can he get into the NFL and win the contested matchups against a really good corner? And this is, could he? Yes, he totally could. And if you want to take that shot on him, go ahead. I just feel like there's so many better ways to spend your DFS money. If you've got him in season long, like there are some guys that I'd maybe bump up ahead of him, but you're probably going to have to start him based on roster construction. But like maybe if you have I can't even think of a guy that you'd have at this point that would be kind of coming up through from your bench. Like if you had Brandon LaFell or something, like I'd start him over Watkins this week. But there's not a ton of guys, that are obvious. Either they're better than Watkins or they're not. I don't feel like you should downgrade him all that much due to this matchup because they still do target him a lot, and I feel like Orton's going to get short throws to him that maybe are not really impacted by the defense all that much.
I think Watkins. I'm probably a little more confident than you are that Watkins can win the matchup with Hayden a little more than maybe we're thinking here. But in this game with a low point total, I'm probably.
It's almost like Vegas doesn't think that he's going to be able to do it, or anybody for that matter. So.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I feel like he can, like you said, he can, but I'm probably not gonna bet on it with DFS money, if you know what I mean. And as far as the two quarterbacks go, I don't really think that either of them are a good target this week.
Yeah, no, this is not a game to target the quarterbacks for sure.
Fred Jackson should probably be back to running back 2 status in this game.
For season long. Season long, yeah. If you've got Fred Jackson, go ahead and throw him back out there. I feel like they're still going to kind of ease him back in a little bit.
Cleveland's run defense is pretty bad though, so that's what gives you hope that even if it's a slightly limited workload, he can.
Yeah, I don't know if it's pretty bad. It's not great, but like
they
I don't know if it's
major breakdowns. I guess is as opposed to like on a down-to-down basis, they're not terrible, but they have some really bad moments, which perhaps Jackson can take advantage of those on 1 or 2 plays. Like I said, limited workload, it's not as scary.
Yeah. Let's move on to San Diego versus Baltimore. We'll just kind of go rapid fire through this one because I feel like it's pretty obvious. With San Diego, Keenan Allen has been super heavily targeted, and they're getting the ball into his hands quickly. So you like him. Baltimore's really good against the run, so I'm not sure that Ryan Matthews is a DFS play, but he's getting good volume, and he's the best back they've got, so in season long, you might as well fire him up. And Gates is a nice tournament play, I think, in DFS, but he's not a guy that's really super trustworthy. He's kind of slowing down a little bit as the season goes on. And then from the Ravens' perspective, Forsett is becoming their offense, really. It's a pick-a-Smith week because there's not really a great matchup for either one. Like it's just kind of whichever Smith you think might score a touchdown. And Owen Daniels is a good play just because of his volume, but it's not really a great matchup for anyone on Baltimore. It's just kind of they're at home and they're projected to get 25 points by Vegas, so someone's going to score, and I doubt that it's going to be all Forsett. So you kind of have to pick and choose there. But I think that Forsett and Keenan Allen are the two obvious plays here, and everyone else is just kind of a neutral matchup or worse.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I would say that I probably am on Torrey more this week than Steve because I saw somebody say this today. Like, does Steve Smith have any personal beef with the Chargers? Because that seems to be the only time that he shows up recently.
The Chargers were never in the NFC South. So.
Yeah, exactly. So he doesn't hate them and want to see their lands burned. So I think it's probably more Torrey. And Torrey had a nice week last week, too. He still had 5 catches and like 98 yards or something. So I think he's a pretty safe play. Probably the safer play out of the two. And you're right. Other than that, no one else really stands out. Again, another matchup where I don't really want to use the two quarterbacks.
Yeah, no. Rivers has declined too much. He was trending to be really good, and I don't want to try to trust Flacco, even though the Chargers are actually kind of bad on pass defense. I just don't. I don't feel like he's got enough upside. Like in season long, like I'll stream him if I don't have better options, but I feel like there are better options this week. So let's go ahead and move on because this next game's really easy too. Giants at Jaguars. Odell Beckham Jr. I don't know how this is happening, but he is he's basically taken over Victor Cruz's role, and he's doing better than you would have expected Victor Cruz to do in terms of being the big play receiver, heavily targeted, kind of moving around the field, playing out of the slot, playing out wide. Um, and he's got a great matchup this week. The Jaguars are a neutral matchup at best, and they don't really have anybody who's going to be able to stick with him. So I like Odell Beckham. I like Rashad Jennings, but I don't think this is some obvious game where he's going to be, get a ton of volume because I'm not sure that the Giants are going to beat down the Jaguars.
Revenge game, though.
It is the revenge game for my boy Rashad, and he's going to be either buoyed or pissed off at his alma mater either winning or losing today in the FCS playoffs. So, not that that actually matters at all, but he and Mike Brown, who are both in this game, will be watching. Mike Brown, not fantasy relevant at all. And I don't think I can trust Eli, even with me touting Beckham and thinking that Ruben Randle's not an awful play. I don't think I could trust Eli. And on the other side, there's one player who's fantasy relevant, and that's Shoelace. Denard Robinson is the only fantasy relevant Jaguar. There's no one else there. I'm not even sure that I can trust the Giants defense in DFS. Like, it's a tournament play to me, but I don't think it's a lock because they're on the road. But in season long, like Giants defense, like if they're available, pick them up and use them this week.
Yeah, definitely. Well, just how is it happening with Odell Beckham Jr.? Well, he's just amazing. I mean, he's just a great
But he's
player.
not really amazing.
But he is really amazing. I mean, he's a great player. He really. It is. Sometimes it's that simple. But I mean, I get your point of like, the dude had like no practice time. Like, it's crazy that he's just risen up this fast. But I mean, he is and always was.
It seems super unsustainable, but
he is. I mean, because
like,
it's not just like the.
We've seen LSU wide receivers do this before. As a Bucs fan, I've seen it, and it doesn't always end well.
Yeah, but that's.
I know he's a better athlete than Mike Clayton. I know he's a better athlete than Mike Clayton.
I mean, he's an outstanding athlete.
Yes, but that's not all. Like, I don't know. The LSU offense in college just makes it so tough to figure out how good these guys actually are. So, like, Alfred Blue didn't even play for them.
Yeah.
Like, and he's relatively good in the NFL. So
I see what you're saying. This one is an exception.
And see, I like Jarvis Landry a lot. So it's not even like this small receiver or LSU receiver bias. I feel like I have to be the voice of reason on him, like I am with Watkins, in that, like, slow your roll a little bit. Let's not crown him yet. This is like 6 games into his NFL career, not even. So, but it's a great matchup for him, and this is a chance to continue to do what he's been doing. He's getting the volume. He's like the 4th most targeted receiver in the past like 4 or 5 weeks. So,
at least it's not Ruben Randle getting a bunch of targets.
Well, he is though. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's why I'm okay with starting Ruben Randle this week, because he is getting a bunch of targets. But
you got to do something with the targets at some point.
Yeah, and he doesn't.
He doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Don't get points per target.
No. Well, you should. That would be a nice. I guess you shouldn't, because wide receivers are already way better than running backs in fantasy. Yeah. Let's move on to the next game. Cincinnati at Tampa Bay. Woof. This one's ugly.
Let me ask you right off the bat, because I'm
okay.
wrestling with this question.
Sure.
Based on matchup with Bucks, who's better played this week, Hill or Gio?
It's really tough to say.
Yeah, I know. I've been wrestling with it all week.
Levante's been hurt, which would theoretically make anybody a good play if Levante's not playing. But Gerald McCoy has been so good. I don't know. I personally think that, and this is maybe me, reading a lot of Evan Silva's stuff because he's been on him since the preseason, but I just think that Hill is the better player. Like, Gio's kind of a good change of pace guy, and that's kind of what he excelled at first. And he's got the ability to break big plays, which is something the Bucs are vulnerable to. But I really like Hill and how efficient he is, and how productive he's been, and how he pretty much does everything and kind of does it with a style and a body type that's a little more a little less fragile. But that said, in this game, I feel like this is a game where they can get the ball to Gio in space, and the Bucks suck at defending running backs in space. Hill is they do that with Hill too, but I feel like this is a game where Gio has a lot of big play potential. So I would say that that's maybe the differentiation here. I think they're both good plays, and I think that this is going to be a handy win for the Bengals, so they'll probably both get good touches. So, but I would say that Gio has a better than average chance of breaking a big play in this game, assuming he's healthy enough, which I think he is.
Yeah, I think that I'm on Gio more for the reasons you said, about Bucks playing in space, and I think it's kind of more, this is super weird, but I think it's kind of his. I think it's kind of his turn this week. He's more back from that injury at this point. I actually think Gio is a better player. This is kind of an aside. But I think he's a better player. I just think that the Bengals, it was so odd that they would draft a running back in the second round and then just pummel Gio with all these carries. It was just confusing me, and I think it kind of set his season. While it made him a really good fantasy play in the first few weeks, I think real NFL-wise, it was an odd way for them to go about using him. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that is definitely. But I think either one in season long is good. It's just a matter of DFS where you kind of have to choose. And AJ Green, I think, is a great play because it's an elite receiver against the Bucs, and that's always a way to go. I don't like Dalton all that much. The Bucs have been getting really good pass rush lately. Jacquizz Smith and Gerald McCoy have just been dominating their opposing matchups, and that could be a real issue for Cincinnati. So I don't like Dalton as much. If you're in a 2-quarterback league or you're streaming a QB1, I'm okay with that. But DFS, I think that's a tournament play if you think that AJ Green's just going to go nuts. But even then, I feel like you can do better than that. And I know on the Tampa Bay side, Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson get targets. They get looks, so you can fire them up. But other than that, I'm not sure I want anything to do with the Bucs offense in this game. The running game matchup should be great, but the Bucs are pretty much at a literal 3-way split, right down the middle, chopped into thirds between Sims, Rainey, and Martin. So and they're not good. None of them are good. Sims everyone was freaking out, when is Sims going to play? How many touches is Sims going to get? When is Sims going to be active? He's a rookie who was drafted in the 3rd round and was probably drafted too high there, and is running behind a broken offensive line with no pass game, no consistent pass game. So there's just nothing. If you're in a PPR league, sure, he's kind of supposed to catch passes, but even then, they use Rainey for that. So I just don't think that you can chase the Bucs running game in this game, even in season long. I don't think that any of them are startable unless you're in a really bad spot, in which case I'd say that Sims and Rainey are the 2 better picks, but even then I can't pick between them. So I don't think you want any part of that offense except for Evans and Jackson just because they get targeted a lot.
Yeah, move it right along with the Bucs running backs. There's nothing to see.
Yeah, nothing to see.
And I would totally agree with everything you said about Andy Dalton. That Bucs play whoever was facing the Bucs. That was a really good strategy there for a few weeks, but it's kind of fallen off recently.
And it will be again when they face better quarterbacks. But
yeah, right, exactly.
Aaron Rodgers is going to play them in a few weeks, and you want to start every Packer against the Bucs.
Right, that'll totally be different. But just as far as any middle-of-the-road quarterback, Cutler struggled against them last week. Robert Griffin, who is another broken person, he struggled against them. So that's not really as big of a piece of evidence. But Cutler struggling against them, I think that reinforced that this is not just hey, throw out everybody that's playing these guys. So yeah, I agree with you what you said about Dalton. He's not a low, a reasonably priced DFS guy that I'm targeting at this point.
Definitely. Let's go ahead and move on to Raiders at Rams. Latavius Murray is out, so from the Raiders side, I don't want anybody.
Pass.
Nobody at all. On the Rams side, Trey Mason, I think, is a great play this week. DFS and season long. If you picked up Trey Mason, congratulations. This is why you got him. Is this game right here? And the Rams defense, I feel like they're going to be able to get after Carr quite a bit. He's been turning it over at a pretty good clip. They don't have a running game, so they're going to be able to pin their ears back and really get after the passing game from a pass rush standpoint, which they've been improving at as the season has gone on. And then in the passing game, I don't want Sean Hill, but I wouldn't be opposed to some Stedman Bailey this week. I don't know how you feel about that.
Sure. What's his price like? Still got to be still. Really
I think he's min on both sides.
Is he still min?
I think he is. I've got him in a lineup somewhere, I think, so it should be easy. I chickened out.
Yeah, he's minimum on DraftKings.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, he's super cheap on both sites, and
yeah, no, I
saw like 9 targets last week, I think. So,
and I loved how he scored the touchdown, went all crazy, got called back, and of course Sensibilities Twitter was like, "Well, that's what you get for not acting like you've been there before." And then he scored a touchdown right
away. Your hate for Sensibilities Twitter is pretty epic.
I hate Sensibilities Twitter. I hate Sensibilities Twitter, and I hate Sensibilities real life people. So it carries over, but especially Twitter. Ugh.
But yeah, Trey Mason, all the Trey Mason.
Oh yeah, this is going to be a big Trey Mason week.
Spoiler warning, he's probably going to be in our DraftKings lineup.
That's him and Joe Banyer.
One of these things is not like the other. Let's move on to the next game, Saints at Steelers. You would think that this would be a really great game, but you kind of struggle to figure out guys to play. Let's start with the Saints side, and what are you doing with their not Drew Brees and Jimmy Graham players in this game?
I'm not doing them. Probably.
No Stills?
I don't
like Kenny Stills, but I think his price is too good on FanDuel.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I struggled with, like everybody struggled with the whole Colston Stills thing last week, and then late swapped to Stills. I had Colston in the whole week, and then late swapped to Stills. Frustrating. So I don't know. I just feel like, in tournaments, I guess Stills theoretically is that guy. I don't know. I'm not really keen on playing. The Saints' offense is just not that good right now. So
nope, and it's on the road this week.
So these guys like Stills and now Colston is in that group, and really any of the running backs. I mean, Mark Ingram had his run there for a while, and I still think he's a good player, like a real life decent running back, but
not really.
Well, whatever. I mean,
he's super boomer bust. I was gonna say, and I'll cut you off there because I just want to put this in there. I really think that Pierre Thomas is the guy moving forward that you want, particularly in PPR. But they couldn't wait to get him back out there. Like, he was obviously hurt enough. Like, they weren't just holding him back to benefit Ingram. Like, they wanted him out there, and he got out there, and he took snaps, he took targets, he took carries.
They love Pierre Thomas.
They love Pierre Thomas.
Well, I mean, as a fantasy asset, I'm not saying Ingram is really usable at this point anymore. But I'm just saying, like, as a NFL running back, I think he has some.
Your tape Twitter take on him?
Sure, I guess. When he's a Raider next year, he'll have some decent games.
Him and Latavius Murray will be a fantasy headache for everybody.
Can't wait.
Jimmy Graham, though, obvious play.
Always.
Even with, I think Polamalu's healthy, but that's not enough to worry you from Jimmy Graham, even if Polamalu was still good. And Breeze is kind of he's cheap enough on DFS where you can roll the dice with him, but he's on the road and he hasn't been good this year. And the Steelers are decent in pass rush, so that's been knocking Breeze off his spot a lot this year. So I'm not sure I want to go that route. And then from the Steelers side, Le'Veon Bell is a great play. And Big Ben and Antonio Brown are good plays. And other than that, I'm not sure that there's anybody worth looking at in this game.
I think I'd throw Martavis Bryant into
his snaps have been super low, and he's not getting as many targets per snap anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I'm saying just maybe in a tournament if I'm desperate. But even then.
And in season long if you're hurting, whatever.
It's a good matchup. I mean.
It is, because
none of those
Keenan, so
none of those Saints cornerbacks can defend anybody right now. I mean, Keenan Lewis is a good player, but he's hurt or whatever.
Yeah,
So
he's been hobbled all year, and it's not a Heath Miller game. The Saints have good safeties and linebackers to cover.
how
So.
many Heath Miller games are there anymore? Usually?
I mean, there are some, like the
Other
game against the Bucks where he caught like 14 passes or
other
whatever.
than
But
yeah, I mean he is a living, breathing tight end, so he will be
yes,
relative.
yes, he's a tight end one because he is a tight end. Um, let's move on to another really ugly game.
This is a treat.
Panthers at Vikings. This is about like the Bucks Bengals game. Like I'm not sure there's a lot of guys that I really want here because I just feel like this game could be ugly. We talked about the Vikings running back situation. I'm not touching it. There is one diamond in the rough on the Vikings offense, though, and I'm curious what you think about Mr. Charles Johnson.
I don't really have a good, strong take on Charles Johnson at this point. I think you can play him this week, though, because
The opportunity is there, and his price is great in DFS, and he was probably on the waiver wire in your season-long league.
and
So
he's facing the Kitties. So I mean, I just put a post out about Josh Norman from the Panthers, who actually is playing really well. Because like the Panthers are doing this weird thing where like they're asking him to do what he's good at, and just that, and putting him in successful positions, which is odd. It seems so counterintuitive for a coaching staff to do that. But so he's playing.
what
Really well.
you mean Riverboat Ron's actually not a very progressive, thoughtful, smart coach?
I mean, he was enough to save his job for another year, but yeah. It's weird, right? I know, and it's odd that Mike.
That's the
Shula,
worst nickname in sports. There's no worse nickname in sports than Riverboat Ron because it gives off this illusion that he's some smart, forward-thinking, progressive head coach.
It fit for like the right up like from week 4 of last year to the end of regular season, but it fit then, and now it's like now he's just painfully conservative.
Well, anyone who employs Mike Shula as an offensive coordinator cannot be considered a gambler.
No, yeah, right. I mean, and you know why they made that? Because he was Cam's quarterback coach, and he was a really good quarterback coach for Cam. And they're like, well, let's just keep things consistent.
Yeah, except that like, didn't he have to learn the no huddle from Cam because he'd literally never run it before? Because he never ran it in Tampa.
Yeah.
The Tampa offense when he was here was wait until 2 seconds on the play clock and throw a screen on third down and then punt.
Yeah.
So
and at one point, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but Rivera was like, "Yeah, I don't really see how no huddle or up tempo gives people an advantage. I don't see how playing faster and tiring out the defense. I don't see how that's a tactical advantage." And I was like, I mean, those words like came out of his mouth, basically unprompted. It's disgusting. But anyways, back to my point. Josh Norman is playing really well. He did a great job against Julio Jones, but I don't think that it's going to be something where they like really force this one like halfway decent corner they have to cover Charles Johnson, and the rest of the defense can't cover anybody. So I think it's a good week to play him in DFS actually, just because, like you said, that I mean he was targeted a ton last week. He did have a few instances of poor hands technique, poor catching, all that type of stuff, but I think you can roll with it. I'm interested to see what happens there. And as far
it'll be an interesting one to watch back and actually see what happened in that game.
As far as the kiddies go,
yeah.
I mean, if you view Cam Newton like as a streaming quarterback at this point, I actually think he could have like a decent streaming week. Like pretty passable performance against this defense, but then again, he could also be slaughtered behind his offensive line, who is missing another starter now against a team that does rush the passer pretty well. They've
been improving as the year has gone on in their pass rush, for sure.
So here's the outlook. He could either have like he had a pretty decent game, or he could die. He could die tomorrow. And then other than that, it's you play Olsen because he's
a living, breathing tight end. Yes.
And also one that has been pretty safe. 3 out of every 4 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you play Kelvin Benjamin. You ride the Kelvin coaster forever and always.
Yep. He gets the volume. All right, let's move on to this game where I literally only have one player in this entire game profiled on my little cheat sheet here. Cardinals at Falcons. Guess who that one player is that I have highlighted in this game?
John Brown.
It is John Brown. Yes.
I'm so
Uh,
smart.
uh, Mainly because I love John Brown, and I think he's better than Odell Beckham Jr.
Oh, stop.
My
Out
hot
there.
take, no, my hot take was that I think he's better than Tavon Austin, but that's not really a super hot
That's
take.
not a hot take anymore.
Yeah,
That cools the drink.
yeah. Um, but he is Drew Stanton's favorite, and um, I feel like he has a great matchup. They'll move him around. They'll get him involved, and I think like 5 catches for 80 yards is a pretty safe bet. And so if he scores with that, then you've got value everywhere.
Hmm.
But even in standard leagues, like 5 for 80 should be good for in PPR leagues and a decent play and standard. So um, I really like John Brown against the Falcons. They're bad at pass defense, especially since he'll avoid Trufant, who's actually become one of the league's better corners. Another guy that as a member of both Tape Twitter and Statistics Twitter, when I was watching tape on Trufant, I really liked him. So I'm glad that he's kind of panning out. I kind of hoped the Bucks would get him, but he didn't fall into the second round, and they got Jonathan Banks instead, who's not quite as good. Your thoughts on this game? Are there any players other than John Brown that you'll be looking at to target?
I mean, we know Mike Floyd could catch 2 passes and both be touchdowns, so don't chase
Yeah,
that.
don't start Mike Floyd.
No, stop it.
Yeah,
Just and theoretically, Andre Ellington should be a good play, but he's like hurt and
and they went out and signed a guy, and the coach said like we're trying to get somebody who can play short yardage. So
yeah. I mean, it's kind of and Ellington has played pretty well given that he started the year off hurt and he's looked hurt all year. So, but I think it's kind of in that degree. It's like we're not going to see his ceiling this year.
Yeah, season long, like start Ellington, like
right. Yeah.
he's
And
a good starter.
as far as the Falcons go, no thanks. I mean, pretty much across the board. Isn't Roddy is he hurt? Again, do I have no grasp on the injury report?
Yeah, I think he's just as hurt as he's been all season.
Right.
So
Okay.
I don't think there's anything new there. But
yeah, no, the rest of it, I think Peterson will do a really great job against Julio, who still isn't playing really well anyways.
nope, no, he's been a disappointment this year for real football and fantasy football reasons. So
Yeah, he was the reception receiver 2 weeks ago, and I mean, I thought yeah, he's been very disappointing. So yeah, White, and I think we know what White is. It could actually be a pretty decent game for him because I think Jones will be erased most of the day, so Ryan will have to throw the ball to somebody.
yeah, but then that could become 7 targets to Devin Hester, which turns into 2 catches, and 6 targets to Harry Douglas, which turns into 2 catches, and 7 targets between the backs, which turns into like 3 catches for 5 yards. So, and he's still going to force it to Julio, and they're going to run a couple screens to him. So, like Roddy will get his targets, but I don't think it'll be any more, just because of how dumb that offense is.
The Falcons might actually they're probably going to win that division, and they're such a bad team.
I mean, they're not going to win this week, but
No.
the Saints probably won't either. And the Panthers have the best chance of winning this week, and I'm not going to pick them to do it. So,
Who do you think, just honestly, gun to your head, who wins that division?
I think it's the Saints.
Yeah.
I honestly do. I think they've got the best home field advantage, and I think that they'll win a couple of games down the stretch at home. I feel like there's one team that like the Bucks still have to play like once or twice, and so that's obviously the team that has a leg up because they're gonna beat the Bucks a couple times. But no, because the Saints still play the Bucks again, I think. So, but whatever. I think the Saints are the best team, and I'm not gonna waver from that, even though they've been playing bad. I think there's a good reason why the Falcons have not won any games outside the NFC South. It's that they're not a very good team.
They suck.
And the Panthers should be better than they are, but that defense is not what it was. So
the Panthers are just a fundamentally flawed team.
yeah, there's
they have serious holes at spots where you can't have serious holes.
Yeah, I enjoyed a tweet I saw this week. I forget who it was who said that they can't wait for Ray Rice's $20 million contract in Carolina next year.
Oh, I said who signs Ray Rice this week, and the first person that responded, Alex Gould, responded to me and said Carolina.
Oh, it has to be. It has to be. Um,
I mean, if Jerry Richardson wasn't like over the top, no thank you to bad character guys, probably would happen.
oh yeah, like if this was just a guy got cut, for like health reasons or something, like this would totally be the guy that the Panthers would break the bank for.
Also, actually, these jokes are a little offensive because Marty Hurney's not even the GM anymore. That wasn't the current guy who did it. So actually, these jokes are all wrong. So everybody can shut up.
Oh yeah, because the new GM did such a great job this past offseason of addressing the team's needs. So
well, like I said, fundamentally flawed team. They
fundamentally flawed.
not even have a chance to be good this year, no matter what Gettleman did.
No. Let's move on. This is actually a great game, kind of. This is the weirdest game. New England at Green Bay. Huge team total, like one of the highest since the Greatest Show on Turf days. 31 points for the Packers, 28 points for the Patriots, depending on what book you're looking at. But you struggle to find guys that you really like. So who are the guys that you're looking at in this game? Gronk is obvious, but other than Gronk, like who are you playing in this game?
I think I like LaFell in this game, just because I feel like he's going to fall ass backwards into targets and catches, and kind of like he's been doing all year. Actually, LaFell has played really well. Just another side note, because I get to rant here a little bit about people are like, oh man, can't believe those Panthers didn't bring LaFell back. Like, yeah, because this guy was showing any of this ever in Carolina.
No, Brandon LaFell's a bad football player. Like, let's just get that straight right now. He's not a good football player, but neither is Danny Amendola, and
like
whatever.
that is the biggest hindsight argument ever. And actually,
no, you need to go into Buck's Twitter and hear them talk about Aqib Talib and LeGarrette Blount.
Oh, good lord! I actually got in an argument with the guy who runs Cat Scratch, or one of the Cat Scratch reader writers, about this subject, and I said it was a hindsight argument. He told me, well, I was saying it back before before the Panthers didn't re-sign him, and then I didn't say it, but I'm thinking, well, then that was a stupid argument at the time. So it still doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
But I think I like LaFell in this game just because there should be a lot of points. I feel like he'll fall into them. Edelman, not really as much the Packers' best corner. It kind of plays in the slot. Casey Hayward, right? I mean, so
Yep.
I'm not thinking this is a big Edelman week.
Nope.
I think I like LeGarrette Blount this week, honestly. I'm kind of over chasing Shane Vereen. And look, they like Blount. I mean, everybody hates Blount except Bill Belichick, and so I think, and this is the type of game where he's going to get a few runs and he's probably going to score a touchdown. So I like LeGarrette Blount enough this week.
Not worried about Jonas Gray creeping back from the dead?
Not really. I mean, I think
I am totally worried about that.
You are? I don't know. I
totally think that's going to happen. I think that there's a really good chance that Gray actually gets more carries than Blount in this game.
I mean, it'll be interesting to watch. Just right now, with the information that we have, I think they like Blount more, and I think that Gray thing was just purely one game sort of deal. And Blount for all.
God forbid Blount fumbles, because if Blount fumbles, it's all over.
I hate that.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm chasing Vereen this week. I think Vereen's a good play. I like Brady. I like LaFell. I like Gronk. And then on the Packers side, like obviously you're starting Rodgers. Eddie Lacy, I guess. Like,
yeah, probably.
Otherwise, you start the studs in season long, but I'm not sure who you do in DFS.
I don't really think there's a lot that you can chase in DFS. I mean, somebody's going to score, but I don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah.
I think it could be a pretty decent Cobb game.
Well, I feel like Revis is going to be on Cobb.
That's the thing. I feel like if Revis is on Nelson, then I think Cobb has a good game, but I don't think...
There's no way they put Browner. Like, maybe if they're planning to put Arrington on Cobb all game and run out of the nickel all game. But
are you doing anything with Devontae Adams this week?
Nah.
He's minimum price. It should be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, I just feel like it's just as likely that those targets and scores will go to tight ends as much as they will to Adams. So they've been doing a lot of those two tight end sets lately.
Yeah, I think it's Lacy is the guy I'm definitely going with. And
I think Lacy's your safest bet, yeah. But in DFS or in season long, I mean, like obviously you start Cobb and Nelson, but I don't think you can chase Adams unless
aren't you in the weird, crazy faction of Twitter that thinks like Eddie Lacy's a bad football player?
I think he's really slow.
Well, who cares?
And well, I mean, I kind of care about that. No, I don't think he's as good as his numbers indicate. I
Okay.
don't think he's bad. Like, I'd rather have him than Charles Sims. Um, that's a hot take to some people who think that Charles Sims is a really good football player, despite him never doing anything in the NFL.
I like
Um,
Sims as a player, but I mean, come on.
like, listen, Lacey is. What I don't like about Lacey is the fact that he is being used in ways that don't follow what you would figure would be the process. Like the fact that he's getting 7 catches in games is
That
like
is odd.
it's just super weird. Like he should be like a downhill runner who gets 20 carries for 80 yards, and if he scores a touchdown, he gets you like he should be Mark Ingram basically.
Right.
But he's not, and that's tilting in fantasy because it just doesn't make sense. But now I've kind of just accepted it. He's going to catch like 8 passes, so and I'm cool with that in PPR, and I use him. So.
Well, I think the way Eddie Lacy is viewed is there's like people who think he's great, that people that think he's Marshawn Lynch, which is not true.
Not true.
And then there's I think there's a middle ground of like after that where like Eddie Lacy's a good football player. He's got some good attributes. Then there's kind of where you are, where it's like he doesn't really make any sense, and he's definitely a product of the Packers, which I think the truth is somewhere in between that. And then there's like a really stupid crowd down there at the bottom, like, no, he's bad, and that's stupid. But yeah. Whatever.
So I think that's about it for that game. Like it's just kind of there's too many points that are going to be scored to like really say anyone's a bad play.
Yeah.
I just don't think like I feel like Amendola and Adams are probably not guys to chase. I feel like this is start your studs kind of game. But
I think it's a good week for the Brady Gronk stack. But other than that, I don't know where else I'm going.
I do too. I like that a lot. 2 more games here. One is pretty decent. The other one is kind of ugly. Broncos at Chiefs. C.J. Anderson, man.
Yeah.
C.J. Anderson is the play everywhere and anywhere, season long, FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever. Victiv, he's a really good price this week if you play on Victiv. If you don't, tweet at me and I'll give you a referral link because we both get stuff for that. But yeah, C.J. Anderson, all the C.J. Anderson everywhere this week.
And I mean, he's great.
He's really good. Like I got to watch him, and he's got good hands. He's a very powerful runner, kind of a no nonsense, get right up the field and just go kind of guy. But is good enough in the passing game. Like he's kind of like this is gonna sound like I'm saying that Eddie Lacy is bad, but I feel like he's pretty much doing the same thing Eddie Lacy is doing and doing it just as well.
No, I think that's more of a comment on how good Anderson is than how bad.
I think he's right on that level of he's not like a super special athlete, but he's good enough at being a running back and a receiver out of the backfield. He's probably a better natural receiver than Lacy. He's actually kind of getting catches that are a little beyond just, hey, Aaron Rodgers dropped it right in my hands. That 52-yarder against Oakland, like he had to reach back with one hand and grab it.
He's got serious talent. I mean, that's for sure.
He went to Cal?
Yep. Right? Mm-hmm. It's weird. I mean, I definitely hats off to all the people that were like C.J. Anderson should be the starter all along because that definitely.
You had to know. Like, this is why I was so down on Monty Ball, and I still wound up with a couple shares of him in season long. But, like, you can't expect a guy like that to be the every down versatile Peyton Manning back. Like, that's just not. I don't know why they even drafted him.
That's a good. I was just gonna say, like, why did they even? It's odd that they even took him in the first place. They must have just like completely misscouted what he would be.
Yeah.
Weird because
that's like them taking Andre Williams. Like that would have been the only worst pick.
Yeah, right. That's a good point.
Because like they should have taken Charles Sims and like he would have got hurt and whatever, but like that would have made a ton more sense. Like I mean, obviously it's different, years and stuff, but. Like, realize their mistake and get a guy like that. I guess going back a year, who would it have been? Who was a?
Well, they could have had Lacy over Ball.
That's true.
Yeah, Gio went ahead of Ball. So, but that would be it.
Yeah, Gio would have been great. Like they should have picked up like Bobby Rainey on waivers. Like I feel like he'd be really good there too. But anyway, we'll stop talking about real NFL because no one cares what we think about that. And then Peyton, DT, and Sanders. Like yes. They're gonna score maybe not as much as they normally do, so I wouldn't like maybe stack them all together in DFS. But if you've got them, you got to play them. Sanders has been on the near miss end of like 7 or 8 deep balls over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
He's just waiting for a huge game. He's already had big games, and DT is the best touchdown catcher in the NFL. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
And Peyton throws really well. Even, this will be on the road and it'll probably be a little cold, so he doesn't have the same upside, I don't think, but it's an important game for them. So,
yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be super cold, so it's not like it's not a real weather concern, but it is as much as he's outside and, whatever. It's Peyton Manning in a big game, so if you want to go that narrative street route and fade him because it's an important game, then that's fine, but I don't think that's the way to go. And then with the Chiefs,
Kelsey has a good matchup.
Kelsey, yeah, I've got Kelsey highlighted, and then Alex Smith is going to throw a lot if that's something you're into, but
Shouldn't be.
otherwise, Jamal Charles is a must start every week. I'm not sure he's a DFS play. Is there anybody else for Kansas City that you're looking at?
No.
Yep.
Pretty simple.
Yep. Like I said, I think Smith is a streaming quarterback. But not as much of a streaming quarterback as the guy we will focus on in our last game here. Dolphins at Jets. Let's get the Jets out of the way real quick. Nobody.
Literally
Nobody.
Geno Smith is minimum quarterback price.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're starting Geno Smith instead of Ryan Fitzpatrick, you deserve every bad thing that happens to you.
What about their family? Bad things happen?
No, like bad fantasy things.
I know. I'm just kidding.
And then from the Dolphins side, Ryan Tannehill is a great play, probably the top quote-unquote streaming option. It depends on what kind of league you're in, if he's actually streamable. But I think he's a good DFS play at like under 7K on both of the sides, I think.
I think he's more expensive on FanDuel. They actually seem to pay attention to matchups. Yeah.
So Tannehill's a great play. I really like Jarvis Landry, but his price has gone above Mike Wallace's, and Mike Wallace is still their red zone guy. So I'm totally cool with either one if you want to stack them in DFS. If you're playing season long, play both. Check for Charles Clay's health, but if he plays, he's a good play.
I think he is out. I think I saw someone tweet that today.
In that case,
but again, I have been wrong about every injury.
If Charles Clay is out, I think Deion Sims is a streamable tight end.
Okay. Yeah.
But if Charles Clay is out, though, I think it gives more of a boost to Wallace and Landry than it does to Sims. So I really think that Landry dominates the short to intermediate game with Clay out, and so you can expect 7 to 8 catches for him. So he's a great PPR play. I really like Jarvis Landry a lot. I think that he is a really good football player, and I think he's becoming what Brian Hartline was, but with a little more shape.
But good. Yeah.
No, Brian Hartline was good at what he did. It just, it wasn't anything exciting. He was
soup, salad, and breadsticks.
Soup, salad, and breadsticks. You got it.
That's your line, man.
It is.
No.
And then their defense, the Miami defense.
Yeah, definitely. But I agree with what you say about Landry. He's a good football player. He could get a lot of catches. I like Wallace though for his price more this week against the Jets. I think he could. I think people forget, and I've kind of forgotten that he's actually a deep threat receiver. Maybe that could reappear this week. Who knows? But he does catch those short touchdowns. I think I don't know. Rest of the season, I think Landry and he probably have pretty equal value. But this week, I think just for the price, Wallace is a good play.
Sure. Let's go ahead and set a DraftKings lineup. We're going to enter the $2 play action, which means that we could collectively win as much as $10,000, but we'll be happy with $450.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and fire this up, and let's just go position by position and kind of deliberate here. Are you going to want to pay up at quarterback, or are you okay spending a little less?
The only quarterback in the pay up category I would go for, I'm actually kind of thinking Ben Roethlisberger's a good play this week for a middle price. What do you think about that?
See, I was going to advocate for Tannehill.
Okay, and I'm fine with that. because I probably won't have a lot of Tannehill for whatever reason in my regular lineups. So I'm okay with Tannehill as a
I think it's a
mid-price
great
guy.
matchup. He's 6,900, which um, we never really talk about like this value, like projecting out the value of your players. But since you have a salary cap of 5,000 or 50,000, sorry, and the GPP cash line is usually over 150 points, you basically want like to triple the salary of the player in terms of the points you expect
Yeah,
from him.
right.
With Tannehill sitting at 7, you want him to get 21, and since he runs and usually gets like 3 or 4 points, like that's only like 2 touchdowns and 300 yards, which I think is totally attainable for him.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'm okay with that.
So with that in mind, and we'll go strategy instead of in order here. Do you want to pair him with one of the wide receivers, and if so, do you do you have any inclination to allow me to make it Jarvis Landry instead of Mike Wallace?
I would rather Mike Wallace just because he's cheaper.
Yep, that's fine with me. I was willing to argue that a little bit, but not that much. I like Wallace, and I've got him in my lineups too. So
Okay.
so we've got a good stack there to start off with. If they score together, that's obviously huge. Speaking of that value, that 3 times value, for Wallace to hit that would be 13.5 points. So like that's
right about his points per game.
that is pretty much exactly his points per game on DK, and he should go above that, I think. Obviously, knock on wood, but and then we talked about him earlier. We're going to go ahead and throw Trey Mason in there as well.
Absolutely.
All right, so Trey Mason at 4,600 against Oakland, dominating the St. Louis backfield. Get that volume. Now it gets a little tricky. This is where we kind of got to start deciding where we're going to spend and where we're going to not spend. Do you want to pay up at tight end?
I do want to pay up at tight end.
Do you want Rob Gronkowski?
I do want Rob Gronkowski.
All right, let's get Rob Gronkowski then, because we want a part of that game. Like we definitely want to be spending our money in that game, and I think he's the safest bet.
I was going to say we've definitely identified that that's the safest part of that game.
Yes, and he's also one of only 2 tight ends who's even guaranteed to get a decent workload, and even then, like Graham has kind of been a little up and down compared to what Gronkowski's done. So he scores a touchdown a game, and if he scores a touchdown, like he's almost guaranteed to get what we need him to get. So because at tight end, it's not so much about getting the multiplier; it's really about just like avoiding a landmine there. And when you pay up, you need some production, but you get it with Gronk more often than not. He's gone over 12 points pretty much every week since week 2. And that's not great, but that's such a good floor at the tight end position where you can get like 2s and 3s out of pretty much anybody else. So
definitely.
Let's go ahead and pick a defense just so that we can kind of figure out our average per player for the rest of this lineup. I really particularly like the Dolphins, but we're starting Tannehill and Wallace, and we're kind of – it's a weird thing where if you play the defense and the the quarterback and wide receiver, like you're kind of betting against them because ideally you want your defense to score in a tournament.
Yeah.
And that's kind of betting against yourself there. Do you have any thoughts on defenses that stand out to you on DraftKings this week?
I mean, I'm still probably just going to roll with the Giants, honestly, because they're playing. It's just that's been.
And
like,
I think in terms of finding a defense that's going to score.
That's the safest bet all year with defenses. It's just who's playing Jacksonville. Blake Bortles has been terrible, so
he's likely to throw a pick 6 for sure.
And it's so cheap. I mean,
2,800. Yeah, because they've been bad. Like they're not a good defense, but if they get a couple sacks and a couple picks and return something for a touchdown, like. You're golden.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Has Odell Beckham been returning punts?
I think a little bit, but
I think he does a couple times a game. Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't think we're going to play him, but that would be an interesting stack of the punt returner and the defense. You can do that with Percy Harvin when he used to play for the Seahawks.
And he is God on earth, so
yeah, exactly. All right.
So
we'll go with the Giants there. So we got a running back, 2 receivers, and a flex left. With that last running back spot, there's a couple guys in that 6,000 range that I think are pretty good, but we can obviously go lower than that, or we can pay all the way up. Paying all the way up will mean we'll have to go cheap at receiver, which there are some cheap receiver options. Are you maybe leaning towards like a Le'Veon Bell or Eddie Lacy, C.J. Anderson, or you maybe want to pay a little lower or pay really low and get maybe a Pierre Thomas or a who's the other guy I like down here? Boom Herron or Isaiah Crowell.
Oh man, it's tough because I want either Hilton or AJ Green in the lineup, but I also really want either Foster or Bell in the lineup too. So it's kind of one or the other. Any thoughts on that?
What were the first two that you said there?
I want either AJ Green or Hilton and T.Y. Hilton into the lineup as far as an expensive receiver, but expensive running backs I like Foster and Bell. And if we're gonna then offsetting that cheap, I would go Crowell as a cheap running back, and I like John Brown as a cheap receiver. So,
well, if we went with both Foster and Hilton, which are the cheaper respectively, those two spots. Well, Foster and Bell are actually just 100 apart, but we pretty much have only like 3,200 left per position for the last two.
Yeah, no, I mean I wasn't saying to do both.
Yeah,
so either or. I'm either choosing between those two.
I would rather pay up for Foster in a tournament.
Yeah, okay, I'm cool with that.
I think that they're going to lean really heavily on him because they don't like Fitzpatrick for whatever reason.
I think there's a good reason.
And then John Brown at receiver.
Yeah, that was the other.
I like that. So we've got.
I knew that would be an easy one.
Yeah. You don't have to tell me twice. Tannehill, Mason, Foster, Wallace, Brown, Gronkowski, Giants, and we have wide receiver and flex left. How do you feel about Charles Johnson?
Yeah, I'm cool with it.
For 4K, and that leaves us 6K at the flex, which could be Denard Robinson or Keenan Allen. Or
not Denard.
It's unfortunately $300 less than Justin Forsett, who I think would be the obvious play there. And I don't really see a place where we could save $300, unfortunately.
I'm thinking Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I'm totally cool with that. I feel like he's a little safe, but and doesn't have a ton of upside. But they have just been feeding him the ball a lot lately, so that could stand out. And we've got some upside guys in Brown and Johnson and Wallace that Allen just gives us kind of a little bit of a mid-range floor there. He should be able to get his 18 points that he needs to triple his value. I feel like he's gone to that number the past couple of weeks, right? 14 and then 24. So. And then 22 4 weeks ago. So he's 3 of the last 4. He has hit that sort of range that we need him to be at, like 14 to 18 points. So I like that, and that zeroes us out. So we're using every dollar. Tannehill, Mason, Foster, Wallace, Brown, Johnson, Gronkowski, Allen, and the Giants defense. So we will enter that, and that'll be posted on the website later if you want to check it out and mock it. And make fun of us for our terrible calls. We did have a question tweeted in from Michael Stepney, who tweets us all the time and one of our avid followers, and we definitely appreciate that. On Victive specifically, he was asking for the difference or our thoughts on Wallace versus Landry. Wallace is cheaper there as well. I think that Wallace is the play if he's cheaper. I like Landry a lot. I think that the one place where I would play Landry over Wallace is on DraftKings because of the full PPR. It's half on Victive, and so I think Wallace is the obvious play there.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something we've covered a lot during the show too. So, Michael, if you're listening, I think that we would go with Wallace unless
Like I said, I think Landry is in play in full point PPR.
In cash games, I think definitely for sure. I would rather have Landry.
That's true. In a cash game, I would lean that way too. Particularly, like I said, particularly in PPR, because in cash in half point PPR, he may only get you like 3 points from those catches if he only hauls in like 6 or 7. So it's a definite boom or bust with Wallace because he is prone to disappear from games a little bit too. So
yeah. Also, I think we got another question like way earlier in the week.
We did, yeah.
From Big Perm 3313.
Yes.
He asked this playoff question for you guys going forward in PPR. Would you rather have Cutler, Romo, or Big Ben? Well, none of them catch passes, so I don't know how.
I feel like Ben's the most likely to catch a pass, though, out of those three.
Well, yeah, definitely. It's not Romo. After last week, I'm definitely concerned, like with his back and all that business.
Yeah.
I think it's Ben.
I agree. I think it's Ben. I think it's Ben, Cutler, Romo in that order.
Yeah.
I think the Cutler has a little more upside, but I also feel like their season's about to be just totally done, and his mentality with a lost season is kind of both a good and bad thing. So
yeah.
I think Ben is the best play there. They're in a playoff race. He's got the weapons, and that offense is very heavily tilted towards him getting the ball down the field. So,
agree. Also, side note, I just am scrolling my timeline, and I see Jameis Winston's first quarter stats from today: 2 for 8, 25% completion, 5 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions.
Wow.
First quarter.
I want if you're watching this and you think that Jameis Winston is better than Marcus Mariota, I want you to tweet me so that I can make fun of you because I'm wrong about a lot of stuff and I deserve to be laughed at. But I've been pretty heavily on the Marcus better than.
Is that even a hot take though? I feel like
it is. There are so many people who are convinced that and it's part of this is because I'm in Florida and I follow a lot of FSU fans who pretend they're not FSU fans. But they're so convinced that Winston is just this Andrew Luck understands the game and sees the game so well, and they're all stuck on this Mariota's a system quarterback thing.
Well, I will tell you, I don't have an opinion on the matter, but more and more I'm thinking with quarterbacks like, that and this is something that Waldman and Bloom hit on this in one of those recent RSP film rooms. Quarterbacks playing inside and outside of structure, and I do think Winston does a good job of playing outside of structure. And I want to really, when I study the two quarterbacks, I want to kind of juxtapose that together. But I definitely think at this point, it's a tough argument to make that Winston is better than Mariota.
Yeah, I don't think it's an argument you can make anymore.
Dane Brewer also just tweeted out, the same person who tweeted the first thing, he said of Jameis's 16 interceptions this season, 13 of them have come in the first half, which has kind of been his deal this year, and which is why seems like he's much better outside of structure than inside structure. He's much better in the second half. He struggles a lot in the first half, and it's like, this is not like the first.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Manziel.
Yeah, I think they are nothing alike,
They're nothing alike, yeah, exactly.
But they have that same sort of mentality where, this is not the first game this season that Winston has thrown up all over himself in the first half.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that there's some elements of Andrew Luck to his game, but first of all,
not enough to make that game.
No, first of all, there are some of the bad elements of Andrew Luck's game that he has too.
There are no bad elements of
exactly.
Andrew Luck's game, Leo.
Andrew Luck is Odell Beckham and Andrew Luck, if they were on the same team, God would literally just drive his hand through the roof of the commissioner's office and just scribe 16-0 down, and the rest of the season unfolded that way.
And if Christine Michael was the running back, oh boy.
Goodness gracious. Okay. Mariota's really good.
I'm really interested to get into drafts.
Yeah, I need to watch him from a not rooting for that team because I just like the.
It's true. You have weird fan interests, kind of all over the place.
It's not, I'm not even a fan. I just root for them. I wouldn't say that I'm a fan of them because a fan means that you have this attachment to them, and I don't. I just root for them because I like their style and I like their offense and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of Chip Kelly, and I can never be an Eagles fan. So
well, Chip Kelly he is actually a god on
earth. Yeah, the fact that the Bucs almost had him is just the worst.
How do you not slander
to go from the potential of Chip Kelly to Greg Schiano and Lovie Smith is just oh my gosh.
That's so mean when you say it like that.
First of all, it shows how little of a plan that the front office of the Bucs actually had. What kind of plan is that?
Like they were honestly like, well, everybody wants Chip Kelly. We should want Chip Kelly, and then they went
Yes.
with the complete opposite
And
person.
they did that with Bill Parcells like 4 times. Like everyone wants Bill Parcells. Let's court Bill Parcells to be our head coach, and he turned them down like 4 times.
Yeah.
Like they probably come to these guys with a plan of like the coach is like, well, what are you going to do with me once I become the head coach? And they're like, you're going to score points and win football games. And they're like, no, thanks. I'll go back to what I was doing before.
Oh, no, pass. I'll go.
But then Lovie Smith is like, I like scoring points and winning football games. Let's do this.
As long as you can let me teach these guys to be in good persons as well.
Yeah, good.
Persons. Oh my
God. Persons.
Persons.
All right. I think that about does it. We'll post. I'll post a quick wrap up on the site. Actually, I may try to talk Matt into doing it. I'm not sure.
You won't get me in trouble. I gotta run like right after that. I'm serious.
Anyway, no, that'll be up on the site and with a recap and the DraftKings lineup that we posted. Feel free to tweet us any questions. We will answer them up until your games start tomorrow. So best of luck. Anything that we should check out from you this week, Matt?
Like just the two things that I mentioned. Somehow I ended up squeezing the Black and Blue review column with Norman out there. It's an interesting one to look at a player's developing. And I did do Josh Gordon for reception perception this week, and I mean, who doesn't love some Josh Gordon? I mean, and he had some good numbers too.
Yeah, I took a look at Josh Gordon for Roto Grinders, the tail of the tape for this week, so you can go back and look at that.
Yeah,
I also
looked at when I read it.
I looked at both sides of the Arian Foster versus the Titans matchup and the Colt McCoy versus the Colts matchup. I looked at both sides of that for Roto Grinders as well, so you can go check that out. I think that's pretty illuminating on those, particularly what I was talking about with the Texans and the zone run and how the Titans defend that.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. I really like that point that you brought up.
I looked back at a couple of their games against the Ravens and the way that Forsett was able to score against them on a zone run that is pretty much symptomatic of everything that's wrong with their defense. Just this, everyone, like the way that you draw up a zone run, like the Titans players just run to those spots that like they drop on the chalkboard. Like they tell like the guard who's getting to the second level, like, you're going to get this guy to the right of the hole, and then you're going to, force him out to the right. And like the Titans linebackers just do that exactly. They're like
yes,
football
sir.
players, like who are just like,
That's,
yeah. They.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at that one again.
It's really fascinating. And the way that they were burned by Foster in the first game, like it's just It was a play where like you can just see it unfolding with Blue at running back and it being like a 3-yard gain, but Foster does a jump cut and then another cut and gets all the way to the backside of the play where everyone had over pursued and got a 40-yard touchdown. Like
gorgeous.
They're just so bad about that. And I feel like I feel like the Giants are the same way, maybe, that they do a lot of that over pursuit and not containing on the backside. So that's another team where if it's a good zone running team, that the Giants are a good team to target with that, which is why the Eagles theoretically should tear them apart, every time. But that doesn't necessarily always happen. It does. I think it did once this year, but.
Yeah, and one other thing you can look out for from me, I just actually right before we came on here taped an RSB Film Room episode with Matt Waldman, looking at Devontae Parker from Louisville and Devontae Davis from UNLV. Really was a ton of fun to do, and
Did you take a look at Devontae Boyd as well, just to get all the Devontaes?
No, it was really funny because when we started the show, I was like, "Your name is Matt, my name's Matt. We're looking at two Devontaes. This is going to get really confusing." But it was. I think we found some really interesting conclusions with the two players, and I know
Parker had a huge day today too.
Yeah, I mean, I came away with a lot of questions, a lot of concerns.
About Parker?
About Parker, yeah. And there's some and just I didn't just choose because I kind of picked the two that we did. I didn't pick them just because their names were Devontae, but there's a little bit of there was a little bit of question, kind of like, why do you pay for the price you're gonna have to pay for Parker when you can get a player who's actually might have more upside and also similarly skilled in Davis, much later on. But it's worth a watch. Those episodes are super long, but I would encourage everybody to look at it. It's pretty interesting, and it's super fun to do too.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. We'll post that on the Twitter account or something. Just point me in the direction, and I will post it up there. Um,
All four of our Twitter followers.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'll tweet it from mine and whatever. But whatever. That'll do it for this episode of the Fantasy Game Plan. Like I said, go check out the website, fantasygameplan.sportsblog.com, for the recap of the show. And um, yeah, and follow us on Twitter. I am at Leo Howell8. Matt is at Matt Harmon _ BYB. His cam's a little fuzzy, so you probably can't see it. But Matt Harmon _ BYB is Matt. So go check him out and tweet us your questions as well. But that'll do it for this week. Best of luck in week 13, and we will see you next Wednesday probably because there's not a weird holiday thing next week. Adios.